Hello, everyone, and welcome, Luke. Welcome back.
Hey,
Hey, like you said in the chat, it's been a while.
it has been. It
Yeah.
has been. I'm sure Answers and Reason are going to be jealous that I've gone
I,
here because I haven't
I,
done Psyched in ages.
I think they are, but they actually did put a stream on last week. I was there, and I was like, I really missed them too. They've not been on either. So, yeah, everybody's been away. It's been lonely out here on YouTube without you guys. So, I miss you. I do hope you do come back with your Monday show when you can. I know real life gets busy, and of course, in real life first for all of us, right? But welcome everyone in the chat. I'm glad you could spend some time with us this afternoon. Luke and I had a little interesting thing to talk about today, and as you saw on the description, we're going to talk about cults. And is it really a cult? Because just like that first stream we did, you remember our first stream? It was about a word and a title that people throw around all the time that just gets overly used and it takes the meaning away. We talked about narcissists and narcissism and how that can be just recategorized on someone like so much that it kind of takes it away, even though they're just talking about the traits, that it's not really a narcissist. I kind of feel the same way about that word cult.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah. I really do. But let me pull up the first thing is the definition of a cult, because we're going to start with the biggest controversy about the whole thing. No one can agree on what the definition of a cult is. Okay. It's crazy. Everywhere you look, it's just a little different, isn't it? I found this one on in an article based on psychology and cults. And this one kind of hit me the best because it was broader. Like it kind of encompassed everything in a way. But
yeah,
basically, go ahead.
no, go on.
Yeah. Well, it just says that it's a highly organized group led by a dynamic leader who exercises strong control. I mean, that's just like a bare bones sentence on when you look at a cult, what you see.
Absolutely, and I think probably that's what most people have in their head when they think of a cult. When they're imagining what a cult is, they're imagining this. They're imagining, like Heaven's Gate. They're imagining that kind of level of control and coercion from and a dynamic leader, or sometimes they're called charismatic leader. I don't think that when people imagine a cult, they think of just like a group of people that hang out, you know?
Yeah, or just have a common interest. Like, a cult isn't like your book club. It's not like, like, for example, it's not like you're not the cult of Game of Thrones just because you all like to read, George R. Martin in the series, or whatever. It's like, they might say it's what, cultish behavior, like if you were obsessed with it, but not a cult,
Yeah,
definitely not a cult.
exactly. And I think this is the thing, is that people use this term quite a lot, quite loosely, I think, in order to describe this, but talk about a group that isn't like this at all. And that happens quite frequently. And what I mean, it's used as a political tool, really, or like a rhetorical tool, in order to try and like, give people a reason not to like that group, or give them a reason not to want to engage in that group of people. It's an easy way of kind of saying, look, they're not good because they're this thing,
Yeah, it does have a negative connotation to it, doesn't it? To be based on what we have associated with cults, like some of the bigger ones. I think no one could actually deny that Navixium or was a cult, and or Scientology. Being a
Yes.
select group of beliefs, with a dynamic leader. The second part here saying that, it's a structured group, right? The members demonstrate unquestioned loyalty to a dynamic leader. The cult leader governs most, if not all, aspects of the lives of his or her followers, often insisting that they break all ties with the world outside of the cult, and that such groups are usually thought of in terms of religion, although other types of cults can and do exist, meaning politically, industrial, of that nature. Yeah.
Actually, a really interesting one I saw online recently was a martial artist. So there's this martial artist that used to do, what was the name of the martial art? Can't remember what it's called, but it's kind of a controversial one because it doesn't really work. It's the one that Steven Seagal does. So if anyone in the chat knows the martial art, is it on the tip of your tongue, Claire?
Yeah, it's something like Tai Chi, but it wasn't. It was
It's
some
not.
tiger
Yeah,
something. It was
yeah.
some tiger kind of, something like that. Yeah.
So this martial artist joined a temple, and this temple was really far away from him. It was in a different country, so he had to move countries in order to join it. And essentially, what was described there is how he was treated. He was kind of had to hand his phone in. He started asking questions of his mentor, who he had to call a sensei, even though he technically wasn't a sensei. And once he started asking questions, he got kind of reprimanded for it and got told to, like, basically, toe the line. And he kind of came out of it really traumatized because he lost all his friends when he pushed too hard and stuff.
Right.
And then he kind of went through a few years of kind of like doing his own thing for a bit, and then realized actually that it was very culty. It was an unquestionable leader who was always right. He had to cut ties with his family if there was any concerns or anything like that. Then they weren't allowed. Everyone had to be happy all the time, and kind of go along with what the program was, which was quite intense. So yeah, cults don't have to be religious at all. It just depends on the situation, and if it has the right kind of like structure to it, then it can be a cult.
Yeah. Oh no, it's yeah. The word gets tossed, like you said, like a negative connotation. We see it often, like people that think the same about something or someone. Oh, Aikido, that's what it is.
Yeah,
You found it. You found it. Okay, I knew it was something like that. It's not very popular anymore. I don't think that one. But
No, it's
Yeah.
one of those ones that lots of people call a fake
Mhm.
martial art now.
Yeah. And you know, a lot of martial arts, they do have an aspect of them when they're teaching you the martial art that is a way to conduct your life yourself, a way to think about things, but on like a whole holistic type level, you know,
Mm.
but not in a controlling way like that, like where you have to like, you know, remove yourself from everybody. It's
And I
more
think
like,
I think it's yeah, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I think it's quite in China. I think it's quite a popular approach to martial arts is to
Hmm.
cut yourself off and have like this kind of very it almost feels like a cult, and it's supported by the Chinese government because I don't know if you heard about this MMA artist that went round and challenged all the masters at each like all these different temples in China to show them that their martial arts was bogus. Basically, he challenged them to a fight, and he won
Really?
every single one easily. He was beating them within seconds. And
Hmm.
his in China they have like a social credit system. So
Hmm.
if you have bad social credit, then you can't do things like get
Hmm.
planes out of the country. You can't get credit. Um, you can't buy a house. You can't own anything really, and it's very difficult to live if you have a bad social credit score, which is essentially a controlling tactic in order to try and
Hmm.
like make the citizens toe the line essentially.
Ex-
And he from doing this, his social credit went basically to the bottom, and he's unable now to do anything
mhm.
because he's gone around and basically shown up all these fighters.
Right, right,
Um,
because of how he did it, right, and his disregard, right, for I
yeah, the
guess.
reverence of the
Mhm.
art, because
Yeah.
that's China. I think are trying to display this kind of like thing that
Mhm.
martial arts is a very like honor system and it works and
Mhm.
stuff, and he's showing it up, and then yeah. So, but I think that kind of approach to martial arts around thinking a certain way, doing things a certain way, tradition, all that stuff is
Mhm.
very much present there.
Oh, man, that's very interesting. That whole structure of how they use the social credit thing, like you said, that is a way, almost a political way of making a cult to where everyone has to do exactly what you want without with
Absolutely,
repercussions, you know. So that's like it's cultish, but I wouldn't say it's a cult. It falls along like one of the things we would recognize as being a behavior. Um
absolutely, yeah,
in the definitions, but not exactly. You need more, right? I keep going back to the time in one of your streams where we were all going over what makes a psychopath, was it?
yeah,
um and we picked up someone everybody would think is a psychopath because I think we picked Hannibal Lecter, right?
yeah. It was Hannibal Lecter, yeah,
We all know this man was like separate from everybody. He ate people, okay? Like he was
yeah,
a true criminal, and he didn't qualify as a psychopath because
no,
it actually takes more than just your perception of one or two items that fits the niche of something to actually define it that way. Which almost
yeah.
every conversation I have with you, I learn more and more about. You know,
Well, yeah. I think this is the thing with psychology, especially, but I
mhm,
think any kind of discipline, academic discipline, is
mhm,
that you can get a definition, fine. Like let's take psychosis for instance. Definition
mhm,
of psychosis is believing things that uh, only you believe, so they're idiosyncratic, and
mhm,
um, they're maintained despite evidence to the contrary. Now, if I took that definition and I applied it to, I don't know, religious people, for instance, I can
mhm,
see why people think religious people have psychosis, because to me it's fairly evident. I can provide evidence to people that God doesn't exist, and if
mhm,
they then continue to believe in God, then um, that means that they're believing something in the face of evidence that's
mhm.
yeah. But the problem
Right.
is that you have to and if they have like a really niche kind of belief system, then it
Mhm,
might be idiosyncratic as well. It might just be something that they believe alone,
mhm.
but that's not the entirety of what psychosis is. And if you went to a psychologist or a psychiatrist with that, they'd be like, "That's not enough. We
Yeah,
need to."
that's not right. Mhm,
Psychosis is something that's very specific, and once you've
mhm,
done a lot of training and you've worked with people who have psychosis,
mhm.
it's quite easy to recognize,
Right.
and it's not just believing things that are wrong.
Right.
That's
That's
not
only like one part of it, right? Like
yeah,
it's only one small part of it, in like you bring up like with the definition, you can only take like a little part of it. You can't extrapolate on that. You can't add other things into it just to try to prove what you're trying to say. Like I do get annoyed, like you may also, when people try to say that they're not well in their mind because they have different beliefs that we do, or that they
exactly.
believe something strongly in the face of evidence or whatever. We have to remember that it's a belief. Okay, it's a belief. They're not like coming out and saying, "I have scientifically proven this beyond beyond a shadow of a doubt." The majority of people with a true belief aren't talking like that. They're not saying,
Yeah.
I can prove it in black and white, like this, that, and the other thing. No, they are saying this is what I believe, and it's a little unfair to say that they can't,
And
any
you
more
could
than
yeah,
we can.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
And you could easily turn it on its head and say, if there's an atheist who's the only atheist in their community,
Mm-hmm.
so it is idiosyncratic then, because it's all they believe. They're the only one that
Mm-hmm.
believes it, or doesn't believe it, however you want to
Mm-hmm.
define it.
Right.
But if religious people then approach them and provide them with evidence so they can refute that God does exist, and then they say, I still don't believe that God exists, or I still believe that God doesn't exist, then
Mm-hmm.
then equally someone can say that they're psychotic
Right.
just based on that. And
Just
and so
yeah.
that's you can see how that approach to these terms really falls
Mm-hmm.
flat,
Right.
because
Mm-hmm.
it's not about just the beliefs or whatever. It's about more than
Mm-hmm.
that. It's about, are they truly delusional? Are they truly
Mm-hmm.
hallucinating? And I think it does take someone trained to do that. And I think with cult as well, there's so
Mm-hmm.
much research into cults that's just extra layers of it,
Right.
that you don't
Yeah.
get from a simple definition.
Nope,
Whereas
you
like a
don't.
psychologist would go in and be like
Mm-hmm.
a psychologist trained in cult behavior could go in and
Mm-hmm.
say, yeah, this meets the criteria that we have set out, but they know the rest of the criteria that all this research has put in place. Whereas someone who
Mm-hmm.
just looks at a definition and goes, oh yeah, this could apply to this, this, and this, is missing
Mm-hmm.
all the context.
Right. On that, I just want to, on the start, I had such a trouble. And when Luke first came into the stream and we were talking before we went live on just what to use as the definition of a cult. And just to show you as a reference, we put up the first one that was the most benign one that actually encapsulate like the organization of a cult basically without bringing in all the religious connotations. But however, when you actually look up cult, it almost always is going to refer to a religion regarding as an orthodox or some type of social grouping that is defined by unusual religious or spiritual or even philosophical beliefs and rituals. But they keep trying to bring it in, and I was trying not to make it like being in a religion is like a cult, but in some ways, it could be depending on the type of religion and depending on whether it gets like, let's say, Davidian, or Scientology or Nexium, or something like that, to where the leader is actually imposing on you very specific, unique beliefs only to them. Like there's a
Mm.
leader there ruling your life and ruling the way you're looking at things. And there's not always, I mean, in the broad sense, you could say that that's religion because they believe in like a god or gods that actually have set out a set of rules that you have to follow. Well, not necessarily, like not to that extent as far as I'm concerned. Like I hesitate to call all religions cult. I mean, otherwise you would say we were the here in America, Republicans and Democrats are in a cult, each one. And
Yeah,
we could make it political. We can make it governmental, political that way. We could say that the Tories was a cult, right? In England. Um,
well, I would agree with
the
you
yeah,
there.
the royalists. Oh, yeah, there you go. Okay, royalists are a cult, or whatever. Like we could definitely go that way with it, and I hesitate to be that extreme in the definition, which is why I put the other one up first. But this is just an example of like you could look online, and it could really start you um on another path if you don't take it a little bit farther, you
Yeah,
know. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, I think definitions, we have to be careful with definitions anyway,
Mhm.
especially dictionary definitions.
Mhm.
And this
Right.
is something that Answers in Reason talk about a hell of a lot,
Mhm.
and I think
Mhm.
it's really important. But you have kind of prescriptive definitions, which are the ones that are more technical terms, where
Mhm.
it's always going to be, like psychotic is always going to mean psychotic in the same sense, unless research
Mhm.
changes what that means. Research might change how we approach psychosis,
Mhm.
but and you have things like psychopath as well, um, and then you have like dictionary definitions, and dictionaries are descriptive, so they describe the language that how people use the language. So if
Mhm.
people are using language to define a cult as a religious group or something like that, then that's how it's going to be defined in the dictionary.
Mhm.
And that doesn't mean that the technical term, which is the one I think that with these kind of things we need to be kind of following the lead
Mhm.
of,
Right.
um, is kind of, it doesn't mean that that's wrong in any sense. It's probably the more accurate one, but it just means that that's how
Mhm.
people are talking about it. And I think
Right.
that tends to happen with technical terms. You get
Mhm.
a group of people who use a technical term,
Yeah.
and then it gets started to use in colloquial usage, and then the meaning changes because people don't have that depth of understanding of what the thing means, so they take
Yeah.
the surface level, superficial
Mm.
understanding, and then that's what gets put in the dictionary.
Mhm. And that is something that we did approach. I do believe it was actually Joe from Answers and Reasons that we talked about language that way, and the misuse of language and how you can actually change the meaning of words by using them so commonly in a lesser than way than the true
Yeah,
definition. And narcissism was one of those words. Narcissist was one of those words. Cult is now one of those words that gets used commonly in a way that it wasn't necessarily defined to be used as. It was much more specific, but it gets used in a broader sense, and so the meaning is actually kind of watered down.
yeah,
And started to mean something else, and that's why I did that particular stream was in how frustrating it is for me to watch language get changed and knocked around like that, and
yeah,
like and for people just in the misuse of something or the overuse of something to actually change how we're all looking at it. And cult is one of those things, because what brought me to this actual stream and what actually had me contact Luke about it was I saw a video put out by MeidasTouch um, with the 5 minute podcast guy, Anthony, that did an interview with Stephen Hassan, which, for those of you that are not aware of Stephen Hassan, he is actually one of those that represents himself as being the cult identifier of the whole new age. I don't know how you feel about it, Bearded, but he he did come up with something very, very useful, which was the bite model.
yeah,
He identifies with that. I think you do use that, correct, Luke? If you're looking at like something cult like, I think it is a really good tool for actually trying to decide, if something is actually cultish, if you're doing it yourself personally or you're looking at a group
yeah,
or something like that. It could be quite beneficial. But my issue was that he's now moved from harmful religious type cults, which he used to identify with. He came from a cult environment. He reformed himself, and now he identifies him. He's well educated. He's a very educated man. Okay, he knows what he's talking about. Well, now he's applying it to social media and politics. He's looking for the cultism of politics, and he is focused on Trump, based on Trump's style of using media and Trump's charisma and his ability to actually promote himself against the norm. Um,
mm,
and it was quite interesting to me because I agreed and I disagreed. Like I was like, I sat with my mouth open during the whole video, to tell you the truth. And for those that want to check it out, I'm just going to drop you the link. If you just because this is what sparked the whole conversation. But then I thought maybe we would look at the actual bite model, if you'd like, Luke, who's maybe from your perspective in psychology, and also being one of the critical thinkers in my circle, being able to say what's useful about it when looking at something like that, being challenged with something like, is Trump is being part of MAGA or being part of the Trump political circle, is that actually a cult? Because I hesitated to say so, as much as I see what goes on there. And I don't think all of it's exactly normal, but I kind of hesitated. So I thought maybe you could help us out with that. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
think the bite model is
Mhm.
interesting.
Mhm.
We did discuss it in our psychology in my
Mhm.
master's. Not too much, but I
Mhm.
think it's got a lot of good points. I think it is a really good
Mhm.
way of defining what a cult is and what a cult isn't. I think the only issue that I have with it is the um you know what's it called? Whether it's been scientifically shown to be accurate. Um
Exactly.
and I think that
Exactly.
that,
Yeah.
that means
Mhm.
anything like that where someone, and I agree, I think he's a really well educated man. He obviously has a lot of
Mhm.
experience and expertise
Mhm.
and stuff.
Mhm.
Um, and a lot of the stuff that is in the bite model is applicable.
Mhm.
But I think that when we're making assertions about a group of people, we need to
Mhm.
be cautious, um,
Exactly. Yeah.
in order to make sure that we're not just, as I said earlier, like kind of throwing a label on them in order
Mhm.
to try and
Yeah.
throw them into
Mhm.
disrepute or make them seem
Mhm.
like an other, or you know um, undermine them in any way unfairly,
Mhm.
because I think that especially when something as big as like Trump supporters, there's
Mhm.
that's you got to think about the amount of people that voted for Trump and
Mhm.
the amount of people that support him, and
Exactly.
I mean misinformation, uh, doing all that, the kind of the emotional stuff. That's stuff that politicians have used for centuries.
For centuries.
So,
Mhm.
yeah. So to call it a cult, I think is
Mhm.
maybe, for
Mhm.
me, it's potentially stepping over a line and not just applying, political theory to it.
It would, because if you're going to do that, then you could call every political organization a cult, because they all have a set of values that they're talking about. They use a set way of presenting it. They want you, if you're going to belong, to believe like this over here. You know, come with us. This is the way it is. And it's just a loose way of turning it. It would make so many things a cult. I mean, it would make pineapple pizza eaters a cult, you know, if we did that. But we can't do that, right? Because, it's just pizza. So let me just pull up the just some slides on actually the bite model for those of you um that might not be familiar. And we're not going to spend a lot of time on each particular one, because the more important part is to actually look at how it affects individuals in politics and religions in general. But the bite model, right? It's based on four components. That you look at behavior, information, um, information. I always forget the T. Um,
Thought.
Thought and emotion, right? And it actually, with the word control, in other words, are your behaviors being controlled? Okay, and so it will give you a list of what in a cult it could just be, controlling your speech, your dependence, your modifying your behaviors on how you conduct yourself sexually, how you dress, what you eat and drink, all of this kind of stuff as far as behaviors. If it's being controlled by a set guideline within the group that you're in, it could be a cult. We're not saying that it is, but I don't think there's much on that, right, that we can argue about back and forth, except for the fact that scientifically it doesn't mean because any of this exists that you're actually in a cult. There's got to be more to it than whether you're exploited financially or they take all of your time, and you don't have any leisure time. This is just a component, like they say, right? Okay. The second one was the control of information, distorting information, right? They use terms like gaslighting.
Gaslighting, now that is a term I think gets thrown around a lot as well.
Yeah, is it that? I could do a couple of hours on that one myself.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
maybe we could at some point, Claire.
Yeah, right? I mean, that would be interesting. I think we could do 3 hours on anything, actually. Toss
To be
us
fair,
anything, people.
we could.
We
Yeah.
could.
Yeah.
We
But
could.
just on that, just because it's thrown up a it's thrown up an issue. So gaslighting isn't. So I don't know if you saw my tweets around there was a TikTok I saw where somebody called cognitive behavioral therapy gaslighting. It said that it's
Yep.
acting like you're the problem when actually it's in the environment you're in, and that's gaslighting.
Mm-hmm.
And I got frustrated. It was almost the first TikTok that I replied to because I don't really reply to them, and so I tweeted about it instead because I didn't think.
I think that went on for a couple of days, didn't it? Like, no, yeah.
Yeah, but it's just CBT aims to help you change your thinking styles, your irrational thinking styles, to become more rational. So, if you got bitten when you were by a dog when you were like 5 years old and you've had an irrational fear of dogs for the rest of your life, is it rational to be afraid of every dog you meet? It's not. Yeah,
It's not.
not every dog is going to bite you. So,
Right.
so you have to change your thinking style in some way. So you might do that either through your behavior or through how you think. Yeah, and each one changes, and then they both change your behavior and your emotional feelings as outcomes. And they were saying because it's identifying you as the issue or something inside you that's the issue, then it's gaslighting, and that's not what gaslighting is. Gaslighting is doing something blatantly, obviously, like for instance, turning down the gas lights in your house, and then when the person asks, why are the gas lights getting dimmer? You saying they're not getting dimmer; they're the same brightness they were before. Now that's where there's a story about a husband that did that to his wife, and that's where the term comes from.
Yeah, it's basically challenging your own memory of an event or something that's going on, like that something you tangibly have seen or known or experienced, and the other person is saying, "No, that didn't happen." Like even though they were there with you when it happened, like it's much more specific. But you're right, it gets tossed around, especially on Twitter, right? I mean, God, Twitter is just the biggest defender of the misuse of language I've ever seen in my life. But it is quite entertaining.
Yeah, it is, and it's not misunderstanding, or it's not saying you have issues. If I said to someone that they had issues, that if they resolved them, then they'd have a happier life. That's not gaslighting someone. That's my opinion about their situation.
Right.
Anyway, but gaslighting is often used as a tool of manipulation, especially cults. They will use that.
The other thing under information control is the use of propaganda. You could say this is definitely used in politics in many organizations, not just religions or anything like that. The encouraging you to spy and report on others' misconduct. That's a big one for me. But that is popular in what actually does get classified at what we would call a cult. Like say, just for the sake of argument, Scientology or Nexium, they had to be a certain way, and you needed to report on anybody that was not like following exactly their line of thought and on what they thought was appropriate that you should be doing, saying, or how you should be conducting yourself. There was like a whole reporting mechanism involved in the actual structure of the organization. We'll go on to the next. I don't want to do thought control. That's a big one, though. with cult-like behavior, like even not just a cult in general, but instilling black and white and us versus them or good versus evil thinking. Um, to me, I don't know, Luke, but to me, this is the one that makes everybody just think something's a cult right away. When,
Well, yeah, and I think people think thought control is thought control when it's not.
right.
Just because somebody goes to a church and believes something that they're being told
Mhm,
by, the minister or something like that, doesn't mean that that person is controlling their thinking. If I
mhm,
if I if I held a a platform and I was speaking around psychology and people believed what I was saying, that doesn't automatically
mhm.
mean I'm controlling their thoughts.
Exactly. I believe every word he says, people, and I do not belong to the cult of the bearded heretic. Oh,
Not
like,
yet.
but
I have,
I should start one. Yeah, but I just do find humor in the way people take like a concept like this, like the thought control, and just blanketly apply it like all over. I mean,
Yeah.
you could also blanketly apply it to the fact that if you're doing that, then you might be an alien or a pod person, like it's just
Yeah.
because they refuse to see the bigger picture of it. Like they're just drilling down on the little tiny parts that fit whatever narrative they're trying to instill in and reinforce.
And and it's somewhat ironic to me that people label other people's thoughts a cult because they can't imagine thinking any other way than theirs.
Mm-hmm.
That's really ironic, isn't it? Because if because I can understand why people believe in God.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand why people are conservative, more
Mm-hmm.
conservative than me.
Mm-hmm.
There's some things that I'm like, I can understand why you believe that, but I don't agree with it, such as
Mm-hmm.
um, gay rights or
Mm-hmm.
even abortion stuff. I can see why people believe in the kind of pro-life stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but to me, it it's not the right way of thinking. I
Mm-hmm.
think they're wrong. It's not that I don't understand.
Right.
So people being unable to understand how people think that way, and
Mm-hmm.
then saying, well, they must be in a cult if they don't think the same way as me. That's very culty.
Mm-hmm. You know.
It's the us and them paradigm that's in the
Mm-hmm.
first thing.
Exactly.
Um,
And that's my point. It could be cultish, but it's not a cult. And and just because somebody thinks something totally different than what you have thought about and you can prove, you think it's scientifically sound, you've gone through that whole process. The person standing right next to you may not be that far in any process, in anything. Okay, especially in regards to belief or anything like that. And it's really important to allow everyone to have that process. Just because
yeah,
they don't believe something exactly like we do doesn't make them it doesn't make them mentally unstable. It doesn't make them unwell. It doesn't even make them part of a cult because they
right,
believe it, just because of some of them all believe the same. It's just different. It's part of being able to accept and not let it challenge your own beliefs too. Like that's the difference, like there too. It doesn't take anything away from you for someone else to believe something, does it? I mean, really,
exactly.
does it?
Well,
I mean.
and if we like, let's use an example of like anti-vaxxers.
Mm-hmm.
And in the UK, there was a lot of anti-vax kind of rhetoric going around within the Black community,
Mm-hmm.
um, and on the surface, people were saying quite horrible things about they must be stupid or
Mm-hmm.
mentally unwell or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. Some people used it as a justification to be racist.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about the once you know the historical context of why Black people are concerned about taking vaccines and
Mm-hmm.
the things around like major pharmaceutical companies
Mm-hmm.
going over to Africa and the Caribbean and testing vaccines
Mm-hmm.
for certain diseases and stuff
Mm-hmm.
in like poorer areas in Africa,
Mm-hmm.
and them going horribly wrong, with
Right.
side effects and some
Mm-hmm.
horrible kind of outcomes, even death and stuff like that. then you can see why
Mhm.
black people who have bad kind of experiences in the
Mhm.
health system. Even in the UK, there's more black women die in their
Mhm.
pregnancies and births and stuff than any other group.
Mhm.
You can see why they'd be skeptical about a vaccine and about about what's being put in their body, because historically the health system hasn't treated them right, and that doesn't make them a cult. It doesn't mean their thoughts are being controlled. It is justified that they think that way, and
Mhm.
the route to accessing them and saying, this would actually really help you, is not by insulting them. It's by
Mhm.
understanding those historical things and addressing them, and
Right.
then trying to help them, think, okay, this is the way forwards. And I think that a lot of the time when we think about people that have differing views than ours, we just look at the superficial level of it. They're anti-vax. They must be stupid.
Mhm.
rather than rather than going, um, you know, oh, they're anti-vax. What could be the potential reason for that? In
Mhm.
America, the potential reason could be because the president of the United States was acting anti-vax and
Mhm.
was suggesting other treatments for it that hadn't been tested.
Right, was
Now,
actually advocating and
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
promoting
Now,
another narrative to support it. And on that line of what you said of what was going on there in the Caribbean and all about vaccine, here in America, we have a long history in the scientific community, in the medical community, of that being done, unfortunately, to our Black Americans, who also have um, a studies have been done that have a big distrust of the medical and science community because of it.
well, no wonder they're
And based
skeptical,
on
right?
their right, based on their experience, and they have every right, based on their actual living experience, passed down from generation to generation, on what has happened to them, the diseases and the things that have happened to them because of it. They do. There's why that distrust is actually there, and the thing to do is to try to give them better experiences on it, right? Or to give them the information, not to belittle them for actually being responsive to what has been their experience. You know, um, that's a big difference there. Um, Trump, misinformation is where I have a hard time. When misinformation is causing great harm.
Mm.
When it comes to misinformation about the virus or vaccines, um, I do believe people are allowed to have their body autonomy and are allowed to have their opinions about all of this. But I do have an issue when it causes harm to the greater good, when your personal rights on whether you want to be vaccinated can actually put others in danger. Things like when they said if you weren't vaccinated, you could not be in large groups of people or you couldn't travel or things like that because it was so highly contagious or things like that. I would have to kind of agree because of the greater good, even though it did actually hinder your personal rights. And I get that. And I'm all about your personal rights, but I'm
Well,
also about thousands of people not dying because you didn't want to get an injection or a
yeah.
vaccine. So I have to weigh out, it's one of those kind of things where, it's like the guys on the track, right? Luke, I'm going to go all back to a philosophical exercise where you put one guy on the track and five guys
Yeah.
over here, and who you going to run over? Like the five, the one, like where is your line? And we're constantly doing that, and especially on this issue when it comes to vaccination and personal body autonomy, personal rights, and then weighing that against the greater good. And then you actually add a government body on top of that, and we got a quagmire here, but we have to actually try the best that we can to weigh it out what is best for the majority and to try to minimize regardless of what then president, now ex-president Trump said about vaccination. His own committees of science and doctors were against what he was saying, which
Mm.
kind of helped balance it out. At least it got the information out there. I know that Dr. Fauci gets a lot of heat and he's now getting tore up everywhere because it's post the information that he put out there. So they're going historically backwards and picking everything apart about what he did and this and that and the other thing. And they're actually trying to paint him as a maniacal, self-serving egomaniac, like of some type, which I don't really get. I really think he tried to put information out there that was good and usable, that people could understand easily. Yeah, like that. They take something where he says you can't transfer or get COVID if you're vaccinated, which we all know is not true now, because even myself, who's been vaccinated, did end up with COVID, but I'm alive with a compromised immune system, with heart and lung issues, and that might not have happened if I didn't get vaccinated. So
Yeah.
even though if there was a small untruth about something that said, or maybe not an intentional untruth, y'all remember how fast this happened and how science wasn't exactly keeping up with the mutation of the virus, and that they admitted as they went that they don't know enough, so it's
Well,
a
yeah,
little, yeah, it's a
and that's
little hard to
sorry.
go back and say somebody missaid something when they actually were admitting the whole time they didn't have a clear picture of everything, because they're only going by the information of the moment
And
that they
that's
had.
that's
Yeah.
that's an issue with people not understanding science and how the process works.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think that's an issue with our education system, because if we taught science, you know,
Mhm.
I feel like we focus too much on what's established and not how we learn things through
Mhm.
science.
Right.
And
Mhm.
you don't just know something immediately. Like, we didn't know how the virus was spreading initially, but everyone wanted
Mhm.
answers, and so they had to say the best guess at the time.
Mhm.
And that's been the case throughout history on how science has worked. So people
Mhm.
retroactively changing their opinions isn't unusual, and that shouldn't be sort of as a bad thing if it's a scientist talking about it. If it's someone
Right.
who's saying absolutely categorically this is the
Mhm.
truth and we know this for
Mhm.
certain. But if it's someone
Mhm.
saying, at the moment, this is what we believe because this
Mhm.
is what the evidence is suggesting, then I think
Right.
that's an issue.
Mhm.
But I
Right.
also think it's really interesting, this whole thing around, the legislation and stuff, and what you were saying about like the trolley problem and stuff.
Mhm.
And in a country where jaywalking is illegal and you can get fined for it, it's really interesting to me that people
Mhm.
people then have really weird, kind of just odd, and I'm just going to say that outright. The things that
Mhm.
people can and can't do in America just never fails to amaze me, because it's like, the simplest thing, like crossing the road when it's
Right.
when it's a green light, when there's no
Exactly.
cars, is
Yeah.
illegal.
Yeah.
But
Yes. Mhm.
yeah, carrying a gun in public is not
Mhm.
illegal.
No,
To
no.
me, it's just so bizarre.
It is. We do have, like, it is that little bit of hypocrisy there about it, that little justification of, like, can you actually see that? Like, it gets a little crazy. Because yes, I mean, when it comes to vaccination, there it's such a divided line here in America. I mean, here in America, we've got a big line through the country about a lot of issues, about guns, about vaccinations, that Second Amendment thing can make or break a whole conversation with people instantly. And then now, even with Roe and Wade versus the abortion topic, which I don't want to drag that one into here too, but it is such a thing that divides us in our country, and
Well, it's just
um,
the hypocrisy more than anything that I'm shocked
mhm,
at, because it's like, on the one hand, people are saying they don't
mhm,
want to, and it's the same people. I don't want to take a vaccine because of my
mhm,
personal bodily autonomy,
mhm.
and then
Right,
and then
exactly.
in the next breath, they say something around, like, people shouldn't have the ability to choose abortion, and to me,
Right.
it's like, what? Excuse me,
Like, I
those two things don't go
mhm.
hand in hand at all.
No, they don't. Like, body autonomy is body autonomy, and then yet only if it goes against your personal belief. Now, I'm not going to say that, Dr. Fauci didn't say some things that were proven along the line to be incorrect, especially when he was explaining the use of masks and things like that, what it prevented, what it didn't prevent, how well it was. they could clip anything and make it all that everything. But the majority of how fast the disease spread, why it was a good idea to take precautions, why vaccination was a good idea in actually surviving the vaccine. If you go back and you look at a lot of the rhetoric, I don't believe they said they may have said actually that it prevented it, like, because that's what we think vaccinations do. If we look at polio, measles, rubella, all of the ones that we get vaccinated for to go into the school system here in America, we actually have seen those diseases pretty much eradicated from our environment. They're not here anymore. So we're looking at the fact that it absolutely prevents it, or it eliminated it. But with a new virus like this, with COVID, they literally told us from the start it was not going to prevent everyone from eventually getting infected with it. Exactly what they're trying to do is get everybody to survive it, so that because we can't get rid of it, you're all going to become affected with it somehow, some way, eventually anyway. But what they call it, that, like, the herd thing, in a minor way, not like we're just not getting vaccinated, let everybody get it and see who walks out. We didn't want to do that. We didn't want to do that based on the numbers that the medical community was seeing on the deaths and compromise of civilians and how quick it was happening and spreading. There were a lot of people that were actually dying from it. And so the vaccine was to actually get us to survive through it. I think it might have been promoted immediately because of the word vaccine as to be some kind of safety from getting it. But so many of us, like myself, I've even had it, what they say, twice. I don't know if it's like I still have it or if I just keep I got it again, because they didn't test, like, at that point for variants, in the beginning. So we don't necessarily know, but I did get vaccinated, and I do get the boosters actually when they come out. Does that mean I think that every single person on the planet should? No. You all have different reasons. Some of you have health reasons, personal reasons that you don't. But I believe that it's going to prevent you from getting it. I think it's going to help you survive it. It's going to give you a lesser version. It's like the flu shot. Do they
It's
say
exactly the flu shot? That's
it's
exactly what it is.
because scientifically we're looking at the same basis type of virus, right, Bearded? But if you don't if you don't
they're both
really look,
coronaviruses.
right, if you don't actually look at it that way, that it's more like the flu than it is polio, the measles, or any of that other stuff that we vaccinate with. We get a new flu shot every year, and all it does is help us build up immunities to what that variant and that strain actually is, so that our immune system recognizes it and fights it, period. It doesn't cure it. It doesn't annihilate it. It doesn't, like, remove it from the planet in any way. This particular virus was warned well in advance to be too fast, too clever, too engineered to actually.
No, don't get on that conspiracy.
No, not conspiracy. It
No, I'm
just
just kidding. But
just the
engineered
mutations, just its
Yeah.
ability to mutate itself.
I know what you mean.
Kinda. I know. He's like, you know what? You're trying. You're not going to get me, Luke. I'm going to be good. I'm going to be good. Because I don't own a tinfoil hat. That's a rumor. I don't have one. I swear. But just the way it mutated, it was very hard to keep up with. Scientifically, to keep coming out. And actually, our communities all over the world that work together to get those vaccinations and those boosters out, I'm just amazed that they were able to do what they were able to do as fast as they were able to do it. And I give them credit. And of course, there's going to be mistakes. And I admit that definitely Fauci made some in speaking to the public here in America. And it did make it more difficult for people to believe what was coming out of the government at some time.
I think that's in relation to the government that was in place and our government as well, because I think I can speak for both the UK and the US on this. But the reason I think so many people were anti-vaccine in the UK, and I think this is reflected in the US, is because of the political turmoil that we'd been in for the previous 4 years prior to that. We had Brexit,
Mhm.
we had huge changes in our government that were, it felt very unstable. It felt
Mhm.
very concerning and worrying for a lot of people. A lot of
Mhm.
people didn't know what to do or
Mhm.
how to think, and the government were feeding fear tactics essentially. So for
Mhm.
Brexit and stuff, they were talking about how immigrants are going to cause us issues.
Mhm.
They're taking our jobs, they're making our economy lower.
Mhm.
Um, we need to have our own sovereignty. We need to have our own say in things. Freedom of movement is bad. So there was a lot of fear tactics going on, and there was a lot of exploitation of people's concern. Yeah,
Mhm.
Godless Gamer says it perfectly. Hashtag Project Fear.
I
Um,
exactly, and that's what they use in cultish mentality. Like that's
yeah,
one of the defining factors. Like here with the emotional control, the misinformation, that kind of ties in from A to Z
yeah,
when we're looking at a
absolutely.
cult. Yeah.
Yeah, and then when it came to COVID, you know what? It was another thing that we were being told that we had to be scared of. And I think
Mm-hmm.
the whole anti-mask, anti-vax thing wasn't people saying they were. Um, I don't think. I think the main thing was people saying I'm not going to be scared of anything anymore. I've been told to be fearful of immigrants. I've been told to be
Mm-hmm.
fearful of the opposition, Labour
Mm-hmm.
in our country. I've
Mm-hmm.
been told to be fearful of the EU, um, and now I'm being told to be scared of. Oh, and then on the other side, Project Fear was them saying, "Be scared of Brexit. Be scared
Mm-hmm.
of the
Right.
repercussions of Brexit. Be scared of,
Mm-hmm.
the consequences of our decision as a nation."
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then they're being told, "Be scared of this virus, and be scared of
Mm-hmm.
not wearing a mask in public, and be scared of not taking a vaccine." And people
Mm-hmm.
were, I think, standing up to fear rather than standing up to the actual thing that was in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really the issue. I think it wasn't about really wasn't about COVID. It was about people having been
Mm-hmm.
essentially the straw that broke the camel's back.
Right.
And this is the thing with bringing it back to cults and stuff like that. There's a point
Mm-hmm.
in someone's journey where it will become too much for them, and they need to decide. Are they going to go along with it, or are they going to stand up to it? And cults really don't allow people to stand up to it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
um, and that's where that kind of shunning and that kind of if we think about let's take Scientology for instance.
Mm-hmm.
If you stand up to them and you try and leave them,
Mm-hmm.
they will stalk you for the rest of your life. They'll
Right.
come around and film you, they'll take
Mm-hmm.
photos of you, they'll
Mm-hmm.
send threatening messages to you, letters,
Mm-hmm.
emails. They'll hack devices. They'll make you live in fear for your decision to
Mm-hmm.
not go along with it anymore.
Right. That's an in or out type of organization. And when you decide not to be part of them, they remove you from everything you knew because you actually live with them, your family's with them, or your friends. Everything you do is about them. They do that shunning thing where you're just completely out, completely out. They want to make it as um, uncomfortable as possible for you not to belong. And to have that fear, like you said, project fear of do as I say or you're out. And it's not supposed to be comfortable. Like we're going to make it as hard as possible. That's probably the biggest example of going too extreme in an occult to control people for
Yeah,
every panel on here, like behavior, information, thought, and emotion. Scientology is probably one of the ones you can use the bite model and go down and say, yep, 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 all there, every single part of it. I I would have to question if anybody could say that Scientology was not an actual cult.
oh, Scientology is
Yeah,
100% a
mhm,
cult.
yeah. Although
No
I
doubt.
still find great humor that L. Ron Hubbard started out as a sci-fi writer, okay, and then wrote a religion, and this is what happened. Like,
Yeah,
he just wrote his way into this, okay, and it's like an MLM. someone had said earlier in the chat, then, when you look at cults and you look at MLMs, you can kind of see a correlation there. Yes, you can. And that would be part of like an organization coming off in cult-like behavior. But you need like one leader, and you need that charismatic, and they actually have to control a lot more of your life than some MLMs do. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
like Scientology, that's an MLM. When you
it
look at
is.
it, they say they're a religion, but you actually have to. How do you say your religion when they're not allowed to talk to you about what your religion is unless you pay them to learn about what the religion is? Like you don't get to know anything when you sign that lifelong contract with them until you pay to learn what the religion actually is. Like
Yeah,
you're signing away. You don't even know what you're going to be believing. That is the wildest thing I ever learned about Scientology. When they sign that contract, they don't even know what it is that they are saying they believe, because
but
they
Scientology isn't really a religion in that sense, is it? Because it's
no.
more about it's more like, to me, it's
Mm-hmm.
more like Freemasonry. It's
Exactly.
more of a
Mm-hmm.
collection of powerful
Mm-hmm.
people coming
Mm-hmm.
together, and then, like, they use the funds of people who are vulnerable, who
Mm-hmm.
they kind of like get on board to pay
Mm-hmm.
loads of money into it in order to
Mm-hmm.
fund that stuff. So
Yep.
I think and this is the thing I think with cults, is that they target vulnerable people who may have lost something.
Mm-hmm.
There's cults that target, like, widows and widowers, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
um, in order to pick someone up when they're vulnerable and give them a sense of hope,
Mm-hmm.
and give them a sense of, like, you can belong here. A lot of cults actually target, like, disillusioned teenagers and stuff like that. There's
Mm-hmm.
one cult that I remember where it was an online cult that this mum was having particular issues with, because they'd basically taught her son, who had become disillusioned because he'd been bullied at school and had a really bad time, that um, he didn't give his consent to be in the world, and that made his mum a bad person for bringing him into this world without his consent,
What?
and made him hate his mum for doing that, and was actually kind of influencing him to attempt suicide and stuff like that. So, and
Mm-hmm.
he was like 16 or something.
Mm-hmm.
So cults prey on vulnerability, and they prey on people's um
Mm-hmm.
sense of isolation. I think people who have healthy relationships tend not to be tend to be what's the word, like resilient to
Mm-hmm.
cult tactics.
They
It's
do.
people who
Mm-hmm.
don't have that kind of
Mm-hmm.
space in their life, that kind of those that the good relationships, good experiences and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that, who end up in cults because of this, either that, or they're trying to be successful and they end up in a cult like Scientology or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
um through people being like, yeah, come join this, you'll get, I don't know, a job through it or something like that, and then they join it, and then they're at its mercy, basically, because if they leave it, then something like Scientology, they're going to be followed for the rest of their life.
Exactly. Exactly. And that brings us to the other part of it, is that most often people that are following into those kind of organizations, they have a need. They have a need to belong. They have something, some confusion, some type. It's not, I don't want to say that they need it, but it's filling something in their life that is missing.
Hmm.
And that they are led to believe that it's going to be the cure to whatever is going on wrong in what they feel is going on in their life, that they're just not happy with themselves or their situation or whatever. Um, the tactics to overwhelm someone coming into a cult are like the love bombing, the sense of belonging to something, um, giving them something to believe in when you feel like you don't have anything. Um, and that's done in an individual cult, but that is why I believe Hassan kind of moved over to leaders in politics in countries in his cult explanations. His rhetoric now, I say the term rhetoric because I use that word a lot when I don't find scientific reason for what somebody is saying. And I
Yeah.
don't mean it as to disparage Stephen Hassan at all. It's just that I can't find, like, when he's talking about Trump being like a cult, I could see the issues he may be pointing to, but I can't see how he can actually just come out and say that like that, because it seems a little biased. It does seem like a little like he himself is trying to sell me something. Yeah. And so
Yeah, and I
just to,
understand that.
and because I do see it. I do see the use of misinformation to try to turn a whole group of people. I do see the charisma that he's speaking of. I see the the my way or the highway kind of mentality, the you're in or you're out. I see it all. I see in a leader, I see the narcissism. Okay. I'm not necessarily a psychopath. I see the elitism. I see the belonging to the 1%, like, the power hungry, like the, all of that. I see it, but does it mean he's actually running a cult? No, I don't think so. Just because people want to believe in something that you're representing doesn't make everybody who believes what you're representing a cult member, or that you have a cult.
Yeah, and I think the thing with this, because I do, I can see there's an element of behavioral control that it's kind of Trump's not directly. I mean, he is influencing that, because he will say stuff like, if they disagree with me, kick them out of rallies and stuff like that.
Yep.
And I think that there is an element of that kind of approach in Trump supporters. They're very kind of, it's difficult, because I agree with you, Claire. I think I can see some of these controls in place, but is it useful to describe a political approach as a cult? I can see it being called cultish. This is cultish and stuff, but I think that the utility isn't there, because when we think about cults, we don't tend to think about nations, and we don't tend to think about large groups of people who are voting for something specific. We tend to think about smaller groups who have almost direct access to the leader, if not complete direct access to the leader.
Exactly.
And have I just think the utility isn't there for me. I think helping people to understand these systems and to be resilient to them, and to be able to critically think and search up information for what's real and what's not real.
Exactly.
I think that's really useful. But I think that actually describing something as a cult is just gonna what it's gonna do is it's gonna make it seem like what you're doing is trying to undermine the thing that you're claiming as a cult, rather than especially on such a large scale, rather than having a useful description for what the phenomena is.
Exactly. And this is why when I saw that video, like bells were going off, and I wanted to talk about it, because regardless of how I feel about the political side of Trump and what he does and what he represents, or even that other side of the party, everybody knows I could be a bit biased about that. I'm not really happy about that. I do political streams on it and on the subject. But when it came to this, I actually was like, yo, Hassan, you cannot do this. Like, you cannot assign the word cult to someone because you don't believe in his politics and what he's doing. I see the cult-like behavior you might be referring to, but that would be like for anybody who likes a certain football team. I mean, like, it's too broad, and he's trying to put it on there like a negative connotation. And here's the rub for me, is that he's actually giving it power when you do things like that. When you actually go that far to in your criticism, or in your trying to identify something that you're unhappy with the way that it's going, you're actually giving it more power. You're just saying, I don't like agree with them, and so they are like now the evil. They are the black of the white, or they're the wrong of the right. and I'm just not even going to look at anything else anymore. I'm going to give them that negative connotation so that I don't have to deal with what they're actually saying.
Yeah.
And you actually, when you do that, you give it more power. You give it something to
Yeah.
point out, to say, see, they don't like us because we don't say the same thing they do. You see that? They don't even want to hear what we have to say. Like, that must mean that what we're saying is true. So
And
if you, yeah.
I mean, in this situation as well, what we're talking about isn't a group of people who are directed through a kind of line of authority like we would see in like what we describe normally as a cult, where you have the cult leader, you have their the people that they have close to them, they're
Mm-hmm.
like I don't know, generals or whatever, and then you have people below them and people below them, and it gets like this pyramid shape where you have like this information line going
Mm-hmm.
down. What you have is you have groups of people who are self um, policing each other, um, and
Mm-hmm.
it kind of takes out that like we were saying an MLM element, which
Mm-hmm.
I don't think is necessary for all cults, but it's certainly a big part of most cults that I think
Mm-hmm.
have been researched.
Mm-hmm. It
Um,
is.
you have Trump speaking at rallies, and then you have groups of people in various parts of the country who are then taking what Trump's saying and then self-policing in that group.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I guess you could take those individual groups and say, maybe they're acting like a cult.
Mm-hmm.
But I think to generalize that to the entire country, I
Mm-hmm.
think is probably a misstep, because there are going to be people, a large group of people, because we're thinking about a whole nation here. A whole
Right.
nation is going to be
Mm-hmm.
that
Right.
that like militant about it, but there's going to be a large group of people who do believe what Trump is saying
Mm-hmm.
and do have passion for the political system and are worried about things, who think Trump is going to do well, and they may not know how to access the information because the TV is always, or whatever, however they get their information has always been reliable,
Mm-hmm.
feeding them the truth. And now things have changed.
Right.
Things are,
Mm-hmm.
we're in a post-truth society, as I think Julian Bigini would say, where
Mm-hmm.
truth is pragmatic rather than
Right.
literal.
It,
So
it
whatever
is.
is useful
It,
is truth rather
right.
than what's accurate. And I think that um I guess I think that those individuals who are just wanting what's best for their families and wanting what's best
Mm-hmm.
for their loved ones, they're not going out and uh, engaging in maybe some of the stuff that um, they're not being cut off from other people or anything like that. It's just that they're being lied to, essentially, and I'm not sure if that is
Mm-hmm.
the epitome of what a cult is. Just being lied to by a political figure. That happens all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I definitely, I do. I see the dangers in it. I definitely do. And that is why, like, when I saw a very educated person who does know a lot about these, trying to put that label on there, I became concerned. I did. I became concerned for the definition of the word. I became concerned for the labeling of a political party that way, just because they have different beliefs, like you said. Just
Yeah,
didn't. I do agree he's charismatic. I do agree that they use some misinformation uh to get their message across. But if is it really misinformation when their message was really just don't trust what you hear and see? Like the government is not being honest with you. I mean, basically that was their message. And so they would throw all this stuff out there and it kind of just proved it. I mean, that's how I always looked at it.
yeah.
I don't really think the man thought that bleach, swallowing bleach was going to cure him of anything. I really don't.
No,
I really don't. I mean, and I could be quite cruel in my humor about Trump and MAGA and the whole thing, and I get that. But when it comes down to the actual fact of it, like I don't actually believe that some of the misinformation coming out there that they actually believe it. I just don't.
no.
I just don't.
But then
Whether
it's a lie, isn't it?
Yeah, then it's just a lie and it's a misrepresentation to try to like move their point, and that just makes it political. It doesn't make it a cult. Okay, it
But
just makes it
I think
normal
Goddess brought
political.
up a good
Yeah,
point. You know, he said, well, a point I kind of agree with, kind of disagree with. He says same reason people need to stop branding Republicans as fascists. I actually think
exactly.
that fascism is a more appropriate term if they're acting like fascists, and I think that that's probably it. I think the word cult for me
Hmm.
is misapplied here, because yes, they are acting in line with the bite model on a larger
Hmm.
scale potentially,
Exactly.
but is it useful and appropriate to put like a more kind of like
Hmm.
sociological, smaller scale sociological or psychological term onto a
Hmm.
political thing, or is a term like fascism, where we have seen, you know, the use of
Hmm.
propaganda, the use of lying about a minority group, and fear tactics,
Hmm.
where we have seen, you know, a charismatic leader, who has kind of brought attention to
Hmm.
a group of people, and made
Hmm.
them the people to blame,
Right.
who has lied about the economic and stuff like
Hmm.
that of their country. You know,
Exactly.
fascism for me is probably a more appropriate term.
It,
And if you look at what fascism is, you know, I
mhm.
think that the Republican Party, when it was under Trump, and uh, the Tory party here in the UK at the moment are edging towards that 100%. Like in the
Mhm.
UK now, they're trying to bring legislation. Well, they've actually succeeded in a few areas. Bring legislation in to make protest
Mhm.
illegal. You know, and
Mhm.
they're they're using very blatant kind of like tactics, and well, blatant to, you know, people that understand the systems
Mhm.
and stuff, tactics in order to try and maintain power and stuff. You saw that in America when Trump was saying that, you know, the system had lied about who won
Right. And who
the
won the
election.
election? Mhm.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
that's fascism 101. You know,
But
it's
it is based on a platform where he already had everyone mistrusting government in general for all
exactly,
the whole time that he's been running and campaigning. It was all about you can't trust the system, you can't trust the people in power, you can't trust this, but you can trust me. Oh,
yeah,
total like that is absolutely, I would have to agree, fastest in every respect. And when it comes to this, I would say that both you and Jeff have a great point. I do agree that fascism is a better term for what's going on over there in that whole political party rather than cult. I would absolutely say much more fascist than cult leader. Okay, absolutely, because I can actually see it. There's more tangible evidence towards it. Politically, it's a more political term. Would you say? Yes, it actually fits what's going on there. But at the same time, uh, Jeff's caution of the term fascist being overused, and using and losing its power, losing its definition. I agree with that also.
yeah.
You
I,
know
I,
that.
I,
Mhm.
and I agree with that as well. And I think that,
Mhm.
you know, you need to be cautious, but at the same
Mhm.
time,
Yeah.
if we're seeing it, the thing is,
Mhm.
right, when we had more centrist governments, so
Mhm.
America had Bush and Obama, and we had Tony Blair and
Mhm.
David Cameron,
Right.
people were still using those terms to
Right.
discuss what they were doing, right? And that's the
Mhm.
problem, because now we're in this more extreme version of politics,
And what do
and it
we call it?
actually,
What do we
well,
call
it's
it?
actually
Yeah.
happening. You know, this is
Yeah.
the thing. We're
Yeah.
witnessing.
Right.
We're literally witnessing people's rights being taken away from them. Protests in the UK, abortion in America, and people are dying as a result. You know, if we can't protest, or if
Mhm.
we can't do industrial action, then
Mhm.
how can we get our messages across when the government make a bad
Mhm.
play, and we want to, you know, the next thing is like that's taking away part of the democratic process. And the same thing in America with the abortion laws. You know, like that didn't go through any democratic process, and that is, you know, the start of a fascist kind of regime.
Mhm.
That's what happened in Germany. You know, they were in terrible kind of economic situation after World War One, and Hitler provided them hope and a boogeyman to target, and
Mhm.
said, you know, we're going to be leading the world. We're going to be the
Mhm.
best country in the world. We're going to create an empire, and
Right.
people backed it because they wanted to reclaim what was lost of Germany, prior to World War One.
Mhm.
And it's when I think when people were using it around more centrist kind of um, governments, that's when it lost its power, and now it's actually happening. I think it's okay to say we're leaning towards, or we're edging towards fascism now. I
Mhm.
mean, when you have slogans like "Make America Great Again" and "Take Back Control,"
Mhm.
those were the slogans from the UK and the US.
Mhm.
It says to me that that's kind of it. They're subliminally giving you the thought that the UK and the US were both bad before. And if
Right.
we think about, under Obama, was
Mhm.
Obama's America bad?
No,
No,
that's the
right?
thing.
Neither
That's
was
the thing.
David Cameron's UK, right? And
Right,
neither
right,
was
and David
exactly.
Cameron, they make it like it's such a bad thing, and yet they have a really hard time putting to what actually did David Cameron do that made it like so bad, or what didn't he do like that made it what did he do to make it worse? Nothing. On neither did Obama. You may not have agreed with the politics or the side or who the man or was, but what are you going to point to as far as a scandal or a big thing that he did that changed everything, that made everything worse? Nothing. Like there's
Yeah,
not a lot there to sink your teeth into. To me, it's quite humorous, because they are making it like it was so horrible. But I think what they actually prey upon is our discontent, our inability at the time, at least here in America. I believe that it became so popular, and the why uh, ex-President Trump was voted in the first time was our actual country's climate at the time of frustration, of a very tired economy, of people working really hard and not getting ahead, of things just not improving for a number of years. Okay, not
yeah,
just one president, not just one party. They were all in there. Let's be clear. Republicans had control, Democrats had control, everybody had control this whole time. And nothing was changing. It was same old, same old. It was the daily grind. And here it is, like as a middle American, what we call like the middle of our country, the middle Americans that are working so hard, and now they can't afford a home, they can't afford health care. They're getting into situations and getting older, and they have now lived 20 years, and nothing's changed. Nothing is improving. Everybody promises everything, and nothing actually happens. You're starting to wonder if your vote actually means anything, if anybody's listening to you. You keep telling them you won't change. You keep telling them you want things to get better, and nothing ever does. And then here comes a man who says, I will turn it upside down, and it will at least be different when I'm done. Bingo.
yeah.
You're in. That's
Well,
it. That's
well,
all they needed to hear. And that's
and
all. That's all. That's it.
this, I guess, this is the problem with two-party systems, is that
Mhm.
if you have two parties, then you have one party in power and the other
Mhm.
party disagreeing with everything that party does because they want to be in power. And what that causes is
Mhm.
people, when everything's fine, everything's running smoothly, the other party can't say, well, everything's running fine,
Mhm.
because otherwise they won't get a chance to be in power. And uh, so they have to find holes in things, and they have to say, people are struggling, even when they're maybe not struggling. Um, and they have to apply that to the middle class, because the middle class is the biggest voting pool
Exactly.
in the
Mhm.
country, and the middle class really usually have nothing to worry about. Now they do, because of
Right.
this stuff. So they then said, this is awful. All these perceived injustices that you're facing
Mhm.
are are real, and we need to
Mhm.
target them. And then, that gives the middle class something to back, even though
Mhm.
everything is running smoothly. And then that creates chaos, because um, it what is there actually that's wrong? And then
Right.
when you cross that bridge, you vote for someone who's wildly inept or malicious because they're charismatic, or they make the statement that they're going to make changes. um, and and then
Mhm.
you and then they ruin everything because they're either wildly inept or they're self-serving. And
Right.
that's what happened in America and in the UK, because Boris Johnson was the same. Boris
Mhm.
Johnson is completely self-serving.
Mhm.
He doesn't care about the average person. He has a bunch of rich people who he's trying to help fund.
Mhm.
And he's made some terrible decisions. He's lied directly to the public multiple times, to our faces, as if
Mhm.
we're stupid,
Oh.
and people still vote for him because they believe in the uh,
Mhm.
the underlying approach that he has, or whatever it is,
Exactly.
that this boogeyman that they've created in order
Yeah.
to get in power is
Right.
real.
The government is bad. I'm going to change your thing. Boris is your Trump. I mean, I'm sorry. He
Oh no,
is.
100%.
It actually is the same political line. He got in there with the same kind of distrust of everything, and I'm going to make it better. And I'm the different. I'm the one that doesn't fit in, and you can back me because I understand what you're going through. And then you find out that he's actually, like Trump said to everyone here in America, I'm going to make it right for all of you hardworking people that are actually, making this country work. And then turned around, and the only people who profited were the 1%. All of
Yeah.
his rich buddies, everybody who was connected, everybody who just agreed, but not the people. The people did not benefit, if you look at it, from any of those policies or any of those changes that were made in that 4 years. The people did not benefit. A certain small element of America did. They got richer, but the country did not. Okay. And neither did the middle class that he highly coveted and banked on, and who actually voted him in the first time. And I think that's why he didn't get voted in the second time, because they actually were of a mind that they could see that their lives did not improve in that 4
Yeah.
years at all. And that's what you got to look at. Sometimes you have to look at how it actually relates to you. But this is why I don't think he's a cult. I really don't, because people, he cannot make all of us think differently.
No, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
that's actually a really good point, because they prey on existing fears, right?
Exactly.
They prey on existing fears. Like, I think one CPS, I don't know how to say that, but one CPS ISOP brings up a good point about guns. Let's go back to
He's
guns.
funny.
The fear of not having guns, of not having personal protection, right? There's no other. Well, I don't know. There's no other nation in the world that has as many kind of gun issues as America does.
Well, you have to realize how we started our country, right? Like, well, of course you realize, Luke,
Yeah,
how
I
we started.
understand how you
We
started your
started
country,
on rebellion and the
but
ability to protect ourselves and to arm
let's.
ourselves, and we actually put it right in there that we got that right to do it, and it's
But,
ingrained in us so strongly
but
that
that amendment is up for debate about what it means, isn't it?
what it
Let's
is.
be fair there.
I am being fair, because I actually don't like the gun situation in our country, and I think more towards how you guys are doing it in you all, meaning the English. Yes, okay, don't kick me out, America, but yes, I do think gun control is something that can be done appropriately, like it's done in Australia, like it's done in
Well,
England.
let's
Yeah.
think about Australia for a minute, because Australia found its nationhood on a very similar kind of
Right.
approach to America,
You
in
mean
that
with
it was a
violence and rebellion and a lot of guns? Yes.
yeah, and
Yes.
then they had one school shoot. They were allowed guns. They had one school shooting, and they went, no, never again. And then
Mhm.
they
Mhm.
got rid of all the guns, and
Mhm.
then they haven't had a mass shooting again since. So,
Mhm.
other than terrorist acts, and I
Exactly.
think that
Mhm.
says a lot about the fact that you guys have one, what, like 2 a week or something
Mhm.
silly, like
We
you have
have
to have
we have
bulletproof backpacks for kids,
we
like that's
absolutely
crazy.
have too many, and we absolutely have it to where when you're actually feeling sorry that it happened, people actually look at us now, and this happens to me as an American, because I have a lot of friends who aren't, and they actually go, "Are you? Are you really? Like, are you really sorry that that just happened? Because you're doing nothing in America about it." And it's really hard to answer that. I'm like, what am I going to do? Like the Second Amendment, and there's all of this push. I can't get it on the floor. Nobody will vote for it. There's lobbies against it. There's such a nobody will touch it. We can't even get it to a vote half the time. Anything that's even considered reasonable, like taking assault weapons off the street. You would think that that would be a reasonable compromise, right? Okay, you want a handgun? Fine. You want a rifle or something for your farm or for protection or for sport? Fine. But could we take assault weapons? The ones that shoot like more than one person at a time. Could we take those off the table and not make them a thing, an everyday thing that people are walking around with? But we can't even do that, Luke. They fight so hard. Like they think if you take that, you're going to take everything. It's like a one or none kind of thing. It's like everything or nothing. Like they don't want to even come to the table to compromise. It is that hard here in America. That is a dividing issue through our country. That's like, um, I can't understand it because children, vulnerable populations, children, people can just show up in a crowd and just do massive damage at festivals and concerts and joyous events, and you have to worry about one crazy lunatic that can get an assault weapon and walk in and change everybody's lives forever. And I
Yeah.
don't really think that their right to have that gun outweighs our right for a safe environment
Well,
and our right to life, because
and
isn't the right to liberty and life part of our amendments also? Like, come on.
yeah,
It's so
and
ridiculous.
I
Yeah,
think I
yeah.
think I think for me as well, it's the small government thing just seems very strange to me because people are happy to follow laws in every other aspect of their life, but when it comes to like and for good reasons, like the
Mhm.
reason we have seatbelts in cars. We're
Right.
legally obliged to have a seatbelt in a car. We're
Mhm,
legally obliged to wear it because of the
mhm,
risk that comes with driving a car without a seatbelt, and the potential fatalities of that.
mhm,
And it's just bizarre to me that that laws are there for a reason, right? They're there to supposedly to protect people a lot of the time, um, and I would
mhm,
probably, for me, it's legislation should be there for the safety
mhm,
and security of the people.
mhm,
The government, the citizens that the government is employed to protect and to run. Um, but what's happening now is that it's not that way. It's people that are shilling out loads of money to the
mhm,
government to make certain decisions and to push certain votes through and
mhm,
stuff like that. Those are the laws that are going through, and I think that maybe what's happening now is that the governments are being run as a business rather than as a country,
exactly.
and
It
and
is.
it's
Yeah.
like it's about economic growth, which I think I get because more people. Well, economic growth only works if the economy is serving the people and people are able to spend money in it, and an
Mhm,
economy doesn't work like a business. It's not
mhm.
like the more profit a country makes, the better. It's
It doesn't.
you
It also
you
is the health and wealth of the actual people that are, contributing to it.
Yeah,
It
exactly, and
yeah.
and and you get what you put in from
Mhm,
like taxation and stuff,
mhm,
as long as the taxes are being spent. But that's why you need someone overseeing that who's
mhm,
going to hold people to account.
mhm. Which
Um,
and that makes difficult conversation here in America a lot of the time because, although, everybody wants the stability of having government involved in our basic needs, like a roof over our head and healthcare and education and things like that, they don't wanna give out the control of it because they think it means something else. Like, they just don't want it to mean that, "Hey, life might just get a little bit easier, and then my taxes could be spent actually to make society here in America like just more easy to handle on a day-to-day basis,
yeah,
to take some of the pressure off. They don't want to go there because they have all these other misuse of terms and language to scare people with it. Project Fear, like you said. Let's talk about socialism. Now, being a Democrat makes me a socialist.
well,
Okay.
yeah. I mean,
Okay. Now even being oh wait, on this, okay, this I actually you're gonna love this one. I listened to Ben Shapiro lately on all of his virus stuff that he was talking about, and he really has a thing for Fauci lately. Like he's been ripping them all. And he makes his points, whatever. But when he starts to talk about all of us on the left being elitist, atheist, every single one of us. Like if you're a Democrat now, you are overeducated, over opinionated, and you don't believe in God. And he has just culted us. Like, whoop, that's us.
well, so this is the thing, right? So countries that have the best
Mhm,
uh what's the word, like, oh my goodness, my brain, um quality of life indicators
mhm,
and um like decent salary per household with ability to spend money and stuff like that. Those countries, um, they um, they actually have better education systems. They have free education, And what you see is if you increase education and like ability to access, university level education and stuff like that, then actually what you get is fairer systems in place, because people have the ability to critically think. They have the ability to understand what what is a good decision, what is a bad decision, etc. So encouraging people to think of people who are university educated, who don't follow doctrine or to stuff like that, encouraging people not to do that or to think of those people as elitist and stuff actually benefits a kind of authoritarian system, because without that stuff you don't get questioning. Whereas with that stuff you get people voting for people who are going to be good leaders and stuff. And in the UK now it's mixed. During Tony Blair's time, access to university went up quite a lot, and kind of, I think over the past few years they've made it a little bit harder. They've increased the price, the cost that you need and stuff, and it's put people off going to university and stuff, so it's kind of decreased a little bit. But the other thing is the majority of the voters aren't university level people. They didn't have access to university education as much, so you see people leaning towards this misinformation and stuff. I think that's going to change in about 20 years, when most of the people who are voting have had a university education and do understand critical thinking and stuff like that. And I think that's the same in America as well. I think the millennials and the what are they called,
well, we got Gen X, we got
Gen
Z, we got
Gen Z,
there's so many.
yeah.
I'm confused.
I think we're Gen X. I think Gen Z or something. Yeah, the people that are younger than like 18-year-olds,
you
whatever.
youngest, yes, you young
As soon
ones
as they
coming
start
into
voting,
voting
I
just
think
now, right?
we're gonna get like kind of a lot more kind of. I think conservative governments are gonna be struggling.
I think so. And I think that is why it's getting like so heated, the conservative talk that is said, like, I was really, I mean, I punished myself for the last 2 weeks having to listen to Shapiro. I really did want to try to find something as to what his point would be, but when he actually was just speaking on the fact that the anything that we put out there, we're trying to brainwash people with, in that actually by representing ourselves as being thinkers, we're actually putting down everybody else. Just because, like, when you use the term critical thinker, or Ben Shapiro would say, you are just minimizing my argument as if I'm dumb. And I'm like, what?
Well, yeah,
No,
but
I didn't. No, I didn't. Like,
Ben
I'm just
Shapiro
saying, I
requires
looked
you
at
to not
it.
critically
Like,
think.
like,
Like,
yeah. But I'm like, whoa, but this is how they're like, this is what I mean. Like, why I think Hassan has gone over what I'm gonna actually say it. I think he's like gone over the edge a little bit here with this cult thing, with in politics, in with the naming of several people that he has as to being actually organizing a cult, or whatever. I do see it. I did recently see articles that I was reading about ex-general Michael Flynn actually organizing and doing this like a convention tour right now on Christian nationalism. And they are actually calling for like a right to arms, like to bear arms, to have your weapons ready, because they don't want you to have the America you want. They don't want you to have God. They want to educate your children to not believe anything you say. So you should teach your children at home. Forget the education system. You don't have to buy into this healthcare thing, like all of it, like actually against government, against the law and order, against everything that I could actually see as part of America, everyday America life. And I'm like, well, whoa, that's like really organizing in a dangerous kind of way. But I still wouldn't even call that a cult, even though I find that to be quite a dangerous situation that's going on. And I can see it building fervor and building support because of its strong and may I say outlandish message, that people are so disenchanted with the way things going, that they will grab at those kind of straws for you to make a difference, to belong to something that's going to change. And it is actually radicalizing, Luke. I actually see them radicalizing to the point where they're arming and going to go against the system in anything. And I think that's such a dangerous, dangerous message. For me, it's a bit scary to look at. So I don't want Stephen Hassan to actually help them by this kind of conversation he's having about cults. I want him to actually get on the misinformation side of things and to start talking about how we have to actually change that mindset and actually show where things are actually better than they think, or where we can make a difference, or how to change it instead of burning it all to the ground. Because the only thing that happens when you burn it all to the ground is everybody struggles and everything has to start all over again. If you're not willing to compromise now, if you're not willing to talk to the other side now, or to find even any middle ground, if your feet are so planted in the ground that you are right and everything else is wrong, when you burn it all to the ground, you're just going to build something with the same problems anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I have to say the only situation where I think that Stephen Hassan maybe has a point around, Trump acting as a cult leader is probably the coup. I think that is justified as being, but maybe he's inadvertently a cult leader rather than it being like a direct because Trump wasn't going to like the QAnon meetings and and riling people up. He was having speeches online, but I think that that was a in my opinion very controlled and direct, and I think that that's what he wanted on that day. And he did act he got people who would normally be describe themselves as patriotic and American, true American, because I know that's a very important thing in America to feel that way for a lot of people. And he did get those people to commit what could be seen as a treasonous act by trying to overthrow the government to a certain extent. And I think that maybe could be seen in that way, using the bite model for those individuals. But I think if we have a broader kind of lens on anyone that votes for Trump, I think that's where Stephen Hassan's maybe overstepping.
True. Yes, because he is eliminating like why and what, like in that they're not all participating in it in the same exact manner, which you need to do for a cult.
Trump weren't there that day, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like how many people were there? Like less than 500?
Exactly. But we can't forget, now this has come up several times in the chat, which is the only reason I'm going to mention it, because High Inquisitor, you're right. We can't forget that they are actually forming a new church with Trump as their savior. Yes, they did. Somebody just came out and said that, yep, he is
but America's
a new
weird.
leader.
So that's of course
we're weird. Anybody can have a church here. Okay.
You know what? So there's a new Grand Theft Auto game coming out at some point, right?
Yeah.
Now Grand Theft Auto does quite on the nose satire of American culture.
Yes,
I really enjoy it because it's funny, but I do not know how they're going to satirize American culture over the past 5 years.
Maybe they won't, maybe they'll skip it. Maybe it'll be Grand Theft Auto in space in the next episode, because if I were them, I would skip it, to tell you the truth. It's a very successful franchise and I wouldn't try to go there. I just wouldn't.
because it's kind of satirized itself to a certain extent.
It actually really has. It really has, but I know that a lot of these conversations we got like a little bit away from cult, but if you actually go back and look at the conversation, we actually didn't, because it does all. That's why I wanted to have the conversation. It's all kind of tied in together, and for me it got like a little scary, and that's why I want to talk it out with someone that I trust, like Luke, who can help me balance the a lot of times the fear of what I see in misinformation in allowing the other side to speak as loudly as they do, because I
Yeah.
want to keep my balance. I want to keep that balance that I'm always still listening. You know what I want? You know what I mean? Like I don't want to cut people off because like I don't want to use terms like they don't know what they're talking about and they're crazy and
Well,
this, that,
yeah,
and the
and I
other thing.
mean, I think
But yeah.
with Stephen Hassan's case, I believe he's trying to approach this from the right place. I think he is
Hmm.
informed in his approach, and I think that I can understand. Again, it goes back to understanding over agreeing, right? I can
Hmm.
understand why he's making these claims, and I can understand why he's
Hmm.
trying to draw attention to this so that people don't fall into the trap of politics
Right.
and just believing things at face
Anything.
value coming out of a
Hmm.
politician's mouth, because you
Hmm.
should just not do that. You should never
And,
do that.
and and I think that that's the point. That's actually the point of the whole conversation is that you cannot just believe it because somebody with more power, more influence, or a louder voice than you says it. You still can't trust your instinct. You still can't look things up. There's still such a thing about double checking sources and information and facts and look for more than what just the person is saying or trying to get across to you, even looking at for the reason they're saying what they're saying to you, or for what purpose is it, can help you just settle down on what is actually someone trying to influence you unduly with misinformation or not, because that's my big thing is the misinformation part of it all. And that's what
Yeah,
scared me about Hassan's video, about the video that Hassan was clearly there. And I was like, you don't want to actually come out and keep saying this because you're going to be taking away from actually a great model that you have on how to actually identify a cult by misidentifying for the purpose of making a point a cult.
yeah,
Okay. Like, I think that's what Stephen was trying to do. Warn us, like you said, about the dangers of what's going on with the message that's being given um in that political view, in that actually group of people. But by calling them a cult and by labeling that way, you're actually empowering it, taking it away, giving them something to point on, and they're not going to get what you're saying. They're not going to get it. You know what I mean? It's going to take away from how you look at cults in general later and how we can use the bite model to actually use it. It's going to discredit him in a way. And I thought it was unfortunate. Hmm.
yeah, yeah. And I think I agree with that.
Hmm.
Um, but I think I think he again. I agree with you. I think it is rhetoric at this point.
Hmm.
Um, and
This is,
I kind of get where he's coming from. It's just
yep.
I think it's just, and I agree with Liam here.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Would I believe this thing if it was said by someone I don't like? I think that is
Hmm.
a really good way of
Hmm.
kind of differentiating your beliefs. Like, if you're a Trump supporter and Biden says something, and he says something, if you think Biden that's going to come out of Biden's mouth, how would you react?
Right.
And I
Hmm.
love those videos uh, that are like take something that someone that people that someone that everyone pretty much disagrees with, and then you have to guess whether it was said by someone that they agree with or that person. Like, they might compare, as an extreme case, like Trump quotes to Hitler quotes, and most people would not agree with Hitler. so, so
Most,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
hopefully the majority of people would agree
Hopefully
with
the
Hitler.
majority, right.
So if you can't differentiate the two, then how can you say that Trump's um, kind of perspective is
Mhm.
something that you agree with?
Yep, no, I get it. Like if you got to look at what's actually being said sometimes and not who's saying it, um, to actually get a message or to look at the information, you know. I find I take the person out of it a lot of the time if I'm looking. I want to look at an issue, and I get called to task for that all the time. But to me, it makes perfect sense to take the people out of it and speak on the issue.
Oh
All
my
right.
goodness! You know what I hate so much is how much politics has become. Like, politics used to be boring for a reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not about the charisma of the person; it's about the values that they have, right? So they're going to be
Ex-
boring people,
mm-hmm.
and I guess since maybe George Bush and Tony Blair, probably, maybe even before that. I don't know,
Mhm.
because I wasn't really alive then. But since then, it's become a personality contest. Even with
Mhm.
the recent,
If
Tory
Mhm.
elections recently, to replace Boris Johnson, it was
Mhm.
very much like, they did debates on live TV, and it's like,
Mhm.
what is this? What, like, why is this happening? And especially because most people, like, I'm not like, so in order for, I don't know if you know how UK politics works, Claire, but essentially we don't vote for the Prime Minister. We vote for our local politician, and I think it's
Mhm.
similar in the US.
Mhm. And
And then whoever has the most MPs, members of Parliament,
Mhm.
the leader of their party becomes the Prime
Mhm.
Minister.
And that is why when Boris backed down, only 120,000 people got to vote for who the next one in is,
Exactly,
instead of the whole country.
and they're all
Actually,
Tories.
see,
So it's
I know you
Tory.
accuse me of trying to be English all the time, but I do understand English politics.
Yeah, well,
Just
so that's
yeah,
great,
yeah, yeah.
because that's a small amount of the
Mhm.
UK, and they're all
Mhm.
Tories.
Mhm.
Everything that, I think there may be probably a few Labour voters probably signed up to become part, like, a member of the Conservative Party in order to
Mhm.
be able to vote. But there was no reason to have nationwide televised debates, because it didn't. I
It didn't.
What was I going to do?
Right.
What was I going to
Right.
do if
I
Rishi
don't
Sunak
understand. Yeah, I
and
don't
Liz Truss,
understand that
you know?
either. I mean, it makes common sense because, if the Tory party is in and they're going to go through the rest of their term, right? Then the Tory party should actually put their successor in there to finish it. And I got it. But why they made it a big national thing when it wasn't a big national thing? You couldn't do a damn thing about it. You're right. That must have been so frustrating to just throw things at the telly.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And
Um,
it's even more frustrating when you learn more about UK politics, because you end up realizing
mhm,
that the party system is just complete fabrication and isn't
mhm.
anywhere in legislation anyway.
Yeah,
You know.
here's mm, yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I can get on to UK politics,
I
but
know, I know.
boring.
Here's
Um,
one more point that this is a very strong point, but I do want to bring this in because this actually resonates with me
yeah, I
because
was about to
you
reply
know
to this actually. So
yes thank you record because in any discussion because I did want to end this with how you actually approach subjects, basically not to make it a whole nother hour for Luke, but a couple of minutes. That record says I think bringing in Hitler comparison argument is a dangerous way of attacking an argument since it tends to shut down any discussion before opening up. And this is true. When you pick that as a way to counter something, when you pick something with that strong a connotation, with all of that behind it, you're actually saying you don't want to discuss the issue, like that you're not really open, right, Luke, to
yeah,
moving forward in the conversation in a productive manner
what?
because
Mm.
that's a hard one because there's so much comes. You can't say Hitler without everything coming in with it.
But
Okay.
let's think about Hitler as a politician rather than
Mhm.
a boogeyman that's been created.
Well,
By
let's substitute
right?
Hitler for Trump because in essence, the same thing's going on. Not that Trump's politics are like Hitler. YouTube, I did not say that. I'm saying the way you just bring in the argument of the word Trump or the platform of Trump, and you're shutting down conversation. People are either pro or con, and there's no discussion going on. Period.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
about it.
Well,
In that way.
and I do think Recker's right, but I'm kind of upset that that's the case, because Hitler was
Hmm.
a real life politician who
Hmm.
managed to convince a nation of regular people to
Hmm.
back policies which ended up killing, you know, millions of people. And
Hmm.
I think that, if we're not cautious and we don't make the right comparisons, then we are on track for that to happen again.
We are
Because
destined to repeat it when we
yeah,
don't.
because we're not learning from the we're
Hmm.
basically saying that's taboo. You can't compare Trump or Boris
Hmm.
Johnson or the UK
Hmm.
government's politics to
Hmm.
Nazi politics, when actually the Nazis, one of the first things they did was to stop protest, right? And that's
Hmm.
happening in the UK now. They
Hmm.
they shut down their political
Hmm.
rivals.
In,
They made them kind of seem like they're completely, I don't know,
mhm,
crazy, or completely undermined them. And that's kind of what's happening in the UK as well, and in the US. Like that's what's going on. So I agree with Rekha. It's in terms of like a discussion with someone, it doesn't work. But we need to be realistic, because I think that some of the tactics that are employed by Hitler were effective, and politicians use effective tactics
and they do
to try and control the public, or whatever they're trying to do. And propaganda, the propaganda machine of the Nazis was one of the key things that led to their success in Germany. And I think it would be ignorant and naive to not expect that those kind of tactics to be done again. And the only way to really be resilient towards that is to understand them, and to highlight it when it's happening.
Exactly. And I understand that risk. And that's why I pulled up Leodis's thing here. The problem becomes, if you don't talk about Hitler, okay, what if the person is doing things that Hitler and the Nazis actually did? Well, then you got to like take Hitler out of it and talk about the issues and actually what they did, and actually try to bring the conversation about the issue in the topic, in the actual situation at hand, using the reference, without throwing that whole thing in there, because it becomes too big. It becomes pre-decided. Who's going to actually side on Hitler's side, even though politically you can actually make comparisons and say this is why this happened and this is why that happened, but you're not going to have the comfort of using it as a reference if you just bring the whole Hitler thing in and hit people with it. There's no discussion. Like, people aren't going to side.
Yeah,
who's going to say, "Oh yeah, well Hitler had a point"?
Well, they will if they have a blind test of it. And I think that's why is this a Trump quote or is this a Hitler quote works really well, because what you're doing is then saying, okay, here's a thing, here's a list of policies, for instance, that that. And you might just say, we're gonna say, here's a list of policies. You don't know who they're coming from. Do you agree with them or do you not agree with them?
Exactly.
And if people agree with all of them, and then you say, well, these are Nazi policies, they're going to come to the realization, hopefully, that actually that those policies aren't good, and they don't work, or they do work, but they're not ethical or moral, or
and they're not right.
And I think that's maybe a way of getting around that is just by kind of having not going in with, well, that's like Hitler, and going in, well, do you agree with this, and this? Do you agree that people shouldn't have the right to protest? Do you agree with that? I can't remember. My brain's not functioning, but all of these things that Hitler did, and then saying, well, those are Hitler's policies, and that's what's happening now here.
Yep, and it is, and it's unfortunate when you put that word out there, and it brings so much more into it that we don't actually get to look at it historically, factually, actually the things that happened, the policies that were laid out, how it got there. Because if we don't, you're right, we're just destined to repeat it, as we are in several countries with certain leaders along the way doing the same kind of thing. Nobody's willing to like put those words out there and have that big conversation because of everything that comes with it. We have to kind of find a way to not make it to make it a reference without it coming with all the other stuff. Do you know what I mean? It comes with such an emotional punch. What happened? It's hard to have the discussion. Like, it just stops everything. I think historians can have the discussion. I think political science majors can probably have the discussion, because they're looking at just the facts. They're looking at just this, and this happened, and this is why, and this is this, and this is how that happened. And they're not looking at it from the layman's person, the actual punch to the gut that happens when you try to look at everything there. So it makes it difficult, but I do see why people are making the reference and the comparisons. The charisma, the control, the outlandish policies that don't seem to make any sense to anybody, but hey, it's just crazy enough to work kind of attitude.
There is a silver lining, though. And the silver lining is that both Trump and Boris Johnson were not successful at staying in power.
They weren't, because they promised change that didn't happen, and that's what people have to focus on. They made promises that didn't come through, and people, I think more and more people are starting to notice when they're actually looking at an issue and it's not like coming to play. I think it's starting to matter more. They're getting more and more frustrated, and they're turning over quicker. And I think if we actually can motivate people on an individual basis, and I promote this strongly, not on a party basis. Like, I'm not up here saying everybody vote Democratic, or everybody don't vote Republican or whatever. What I'm saying is individually on issues. If you can find an issue on either party that you want to stick with and you want to locally get involved or whatever, and just now is the time to make your voice a little more heard. Start fighting for term limits. Start typing for you're just tired of the same old, same old.
Yeah.
Instead of asking one man to fix your world, actually look at the world can't be fixed with one man. Okay.
Yeah.
Trump, Biden, Obama, Bush, Boris, Cameron, whoever, even Liz Tory, or Liz Tusk, right? Truss. Okay. What do I know? No one's gonna fix it for you. Okay. Issue-based voting and issue-based conversation and getting what you actually want out there more productively is going to do it.
And do you know what? I think the best way, and this is me thinking optimistically, or thinking about like utopia, essentially. Well, not utopia, but a better
I
system.
like those rose-colored glasses you wear. Look at the world the way you want it to be. Yeah, let's
just get rid of parties. If we got rid of parties and everyone run as an independent,
I am so with you.
You could actually vote on their policies, and they would take those policies rather than there being bipartisanship, which is what happens in the UK and the US. You get these two parties that have completely opposing views, and then you get extremes from that, because they have to be extremes because they have to disagree with the other party. If you just got rid of parties and everyone run as an independent, people would be more focused on their local local elections, because here we vote for our MP, so I'd be more focused on the MP and what that MP values and what they want to put into politics, and then you wouldn't have this stupid leadership races for the leader of the party, because that wouldn't happen, and then you'd actually get a prime minister or a president that's voted for by the politicians that have been employed, which is what the system is supposed to work that way. These parties are a byproduct of politicians creating a system that works for them, rather than actually creating a system that works for the people, because it doesn't.
Exactly, because then it's all about party line and not voting out of the party. Nobody looks at the issue anymore individually about how they personally, or even their individual constituents in the state, or the people that actually voted them in, for the people that they are. They don't get to, once they're in, they don't get to do that anymore, because the parties are so strong. So I'm with you on that. Here is a cross-country intervention happening. We're both agreeing the same in our politics, that no, parties got to go, issues got to come in, independence. I, for one, am one of those people that actually, although I lean a little to the left, everybody knows, like maybe a lot to the left, like maybe like left leaning over, but I definitely
know, Claire. This is the thing. It's all skewed because of how right-wing politics has become.
It is. They're kind of like, reversing everything a little bit.
It's not like it's not left-wing to think that we need to have good education.
Exactly, which is why I became an independent, because I'm confused, people. I don't know what's Republican and what's Democratic anymore. I just know that I want education. I want everybody to be healthy. I want the economy to be stable. I want everybody to earn a safe wage and have a good life, and not work themselves to death just to have things, all of that. So it's more issue based. So I became an independent, which is probably going to mess with the system, but I don't care because I can't decide. I can't say what I am anymore. I don't agree with a lot of it anymore. But I still vote in every single election, even the local ones, like for the just our local district school, candidates and things like that. Every single election, because that's important. You can't complain about it if you're not part of it.
But the problem is, in a two-party system, which the UK has and America has, essentially, like I struggle, because at the moment I don't want to vote for Labour because they're making some really bad decisions I don't agree with. But I feel like I have to vote for Labour because the alternative is Tory.
Right.
So my voting power is limited because I can't vote for the MP that's actually that aligns with my values. I have to vote for someone I have to vote for the party that's going to oppose the current government.
The current government,
and that,
right?
the only party that is Labour.
And
so
we
I have
have
to vote for Labour.
We have the same thing here. If you don't like the way things are going and the Democrats are in, that's why a lot of people will vote Republican to bring somebody new in, think it's going to turn everything over and change.
Yeah, and I heard loads of people didn't like. A big reason for Trump winning wasn't because people liked Trump, it's because they didn't like Hillary Clinton. And then when you see that Hillary Clinton, I saw we'll get to that. You do sound like a commie. Well, no,
are they going to kick me out? Are you going to let me in your country then, Jeff?
If we're thinking about the Red Scare, the Red Scare is happening again.
The Red Scare is actually a bear. Is that it?
Yeah. It hasn't stopped though, Claire. And if you're not a Republican, then you're a commie, aren't you?
I'm not a commie.
No, you're a commie. Just admit it. Admit it.
No.
Claire? Do you want to give the the means of production to the people?
Do I want to give the means of production to the people? Yes, I do.
And
oh my God, I'm a communist.
There you go.
Okay, lesson learned. I could end the stream now. Okay, there we go. Oh my God, socialist order. Liam, thank you. Oh my God, comrade. Oh my God,
comrade Claire.
The Red Claire.
You want the means of production to be in the hands of the public. That makes you a communist.
And I'm an American who really wants free healthcare. I want free education.
That's not left wing.
I do. I don't know what it is, but I just, what I want? I want everybody to have a comfortable life and not to have the stress that I see building on every single person here. I do believe in capitalism, but isn't there a compromise? Do I have to be a commie to want capitalism and socialism at the same time? That's not communism. Like, is it what is it?
Socialism is like capitalism, like, in my opinion. It takes a capitalist system and makes it more what's the word? More manageable.
I can't put this one up, Jill. It won't let me highlight it because it doesn't come up in StreamYards. But thank you. She put me up for president now.
Good.
In the chat.
It should just be red Claire Bear for president.
Yeah, it's red. Yeah, because it's red,
you
white.
You sick man, you hammer that.
Yes, it is. It's red-headed white Claire Bear for president. There you go. Let's just make it that. Let's just call it what it is. I don't know where the blue comes in, but
red for president.
But, Bear in the Kremlin. Oh my God, you guys are crazy. I'm saving all these. We're gonna have a contest on my new hashtag. But Godless does say, in all seriousness, though, I think the legacy of McCarthyism has had a hugely detrimental effect on U.S. politics.
Oh, God, yeah.
You know what, Jeff? Yes, good, spot on. I could not agree more. I actually do. Yeah, I do. Absolutely.
And didn't Trump start using that language again in order to try and undermine his opposition by saying, they're communist or they're
we could look like one actual. She had to make it so I could post it. Thank you very much, Jill. The red-headed white Claire for president. Thank you for clarifying that. But no, I wouldn't take that job. I'm sorry. I like my life. I don't want to be gray. I like the red hair. I would be white, gray in a week if I was president. Like, I can't handle YouTube. Like, how am I going to handle the whole country?
Maybe that's what we need, Claire.
Yeah, somebody who's somebody who can't handle it. Just go in there and say, I can't handle it. Like, give me some advice. Like, wouldn't that be nice? Like, everybody just come on, tell me how you want it. Let's go. That would be so amazing. I mean, we used to do things like committee like that, right? But there we go. I don't want to keep. We've been here for quite a while, and I know we intended to keep it short.
That's what you said.
I know, but it is less than the 3 hours we're known for. I don't think we've done less than a 3-hour stream, like, ever I'm gonna try for today so that I don't wear out the welcome. That I
I think
want you
Call
to
Me
come
Claire
back.
is a good place to end, though.
It is a Call Me Claire. It's like Claire Noodle. No, not Deaf Noodles. Mrs. Cassandra. Now you're okay. You're gonna lose a wrench for that one, girl. No, please, people, take care of that. Not Deaf Noodles. I mean, I would actually run if he ran. Like I would. Like that would be like terrible. It would be utterly wonderful to have the bear for always this way. You know what? Now I don't want to be president. Stop, people. Like stop. Thank you very much. But no, no. No. Let's just say I'd rather be Call Me Claire than president. Let's stick to the Red Bear routine.
That's very communist of you, Claire, because
like,
in true communism, there's no hierarchy. So
there is no hierarchy. See, it's true. Luke has exposed me. That's the new YouTube rumor. I'm a communist. That's it. That's it. There you go.
I'm just going to cut out you saying I'm a communist and put that.
It's going to be a great short. You know, I'll probably get like so much traction off that. So go for it, Luke. You know, every little bit helps. You know, go for it.
I'll do an expose of Claire.
I'll tell you, it's better than half the stuff they make up. I'll tell you that. It's actually would ring. At least I am red. I am a redhead, a true redhead. So at least that part's true. And my name is Claire. So there you go. You speak the truth. Yeah, you speak the truth. You know, you could add all the other stuff in if you'd like. But on that, Luke, what would your final words on cult be? And even if, I mean, let's just answer it. Do you think that Trump in his actual platform, do you find it to be a cult?
No, I think it's politics. I think it's politics we've seen in the past. I think that cults are. I think there's a as you've said, kind of there's a risk of disengaging people from that conversation by calling it a cult. I do think there are some tactics that are used that are very kind of like similar to cults. I think that there are probably subgroups that could be considered cults within the Trump kind of fan base. But I think as a whole, I think it's probably like misnaming it. And I think that really we need to be more focused on the politics and highlighting what type of politics is being used against us in order to make sure that we're kind of addressing the actual policies and stuff, and not just creating inadvertently an us them like kind of paradigm.
I agree with all of that, because it's exactly why I wanted to do the stream, because of that issue right there. Like making it a cult is dangerous, but identifying it for the politics that it is, the issues that it brings up, is much more productive. And I hope I'm going to send an email to Stephen Hassan and ask him to start doing that to help me out, but I don't think it's going to get anywhere. But thank you for your time today, Luke. I hope it seems like we have plenty of other things we could talk about. Like, you want to be part of the campaign? Like, is there a position you want in the cabinet? Maybe we should talk. Like, we could just do
There's no hierarchy in communism, Claire.
I don't know.
You just need a revolution.
Well, you see, like, what we should do is, like, we could do like a cross-country kind of thing, get a couple of New Zealanders and some Australians and some Irish and some Scottish, like get everybody involved.
We could create the first online nation.
We want an online nation. That's it. Because, keeping it small. I mean, if I'm going to do it, if anybody knows me, why would I stop being president in a communist country like this? Like, bigger. Think bigger. Let's do a whole online nation. And yeah. And we'll do it by committee. Then I don't have to be president. I'd be much more comfortable. But on that, thank you so much, Bearded Heretic. All of his contact information is down below in the description. He's not putting out content or playing my favorite game, where he's the car and he plays soccer. He plays footy with a dune buggy.
A
Like,
rocket-powered car, yeah.
oh my god, it's the most fascinating thing. I can't believe I was sitting there watching that for an hour. I'm just like, "This is actually fascinating." We're just talking about whatever, and you're bouncing off walls all over the place. I
Yeah,
actually found that a minute. But there's not a lot of content coming out, but we do hope that you do come back soon with your psychology-based programs
yeah.
that you're doing over at Answers in Reasoning or anything else that you're gonna be putting out.
Hopefully it will be.
Yeah, I have bodied your butt in the Discord, so if you do put anything out, everybody's gonna know because it's gonna
Cool.
get promoted. So
I
there you
will
go.
also do you mind if I just paste a link into the Discord not Discord, the chat as well, just because Answers and Reason are currently streaming
Are they?
on
Then yes, put it down, and I'm
Yeah.
just gonna pop it down there right now. Everybody go over there. They're also some of my favorites. They did now. I thought it was tomorrow. Oh
No,
my.
it's today, but I
Oh,
mean, they're still going. They'll be going probably
mhm.
for, like, another hour knowing them.
Okay.
So if you guys are
Yeah.
worried about not, us finishing or whatever, go pop over there and
Mhm.
join their stream because
Well,
they'll
I
love to
know
have you.
that's where I'm going. I'm gonna go right over there and apologize for going so long, but they'll know because you and I were together that they probably
Oh,
aren't
no, you
expecting.
can't say
They'll
anything. You
they'll
can't say
say,
anything, Claire.
"Oh, yes, I can." They're gonna say, "Oh, well, we didn't expect to see you till tomorrow because actually you were talking with Luke, and, that's like 5 hours long," or anything like that, you know?
They'll be
But,
like, "Why isn't Luke on
mhm,
Answers and Reason? What are you
mhm.
doing?"
Okay. Alright. Did you put that in the private chat so I could pick that up or
Oh,
no?
I put it in the chat on
Oh,
YouTube.
wait, do you oh, okay. Cause are you blue? Can you do that?
No,
Hold
I'm
on.
not, but
Wait,
okay.
I'll make you blue and you can. Hold on, where
Oh,
are you?
okay.
Where are you? Yeah, alright. You have to behave yourself, though. Eh, where
Can't
are
promise
you?
anything.
Oh, I know, no promises. That's
I
bad.
can put it in the chat, that might be
Alright,
easier.
wait, say a word. Why are you not showing up all of a sudden?
Maybe because I put a link.
Because you put a link? Now I can't find you. Okay,
There you go.
they banned you. They banned you. Oh my
They
god.
banned me.
I know the YouTube is being weird today. Very weird today. I saw a couple of people disappearing and coming back. But the next time you're here as a guest, I'll make sure that you can drop links for sure. That is Answers and Reasoning. I probably already it's probably already bought it in the Discord, but for those of you that aren't in the Discord, there's a link. It's always a good conversation over there too, and those mates are pretty cool in these types of conversations also. So thanks for reminding us, Luke. In
No problemo.
all right.
Let's get them. Let's have them have an influx of people though. Like everyone go.
Yeah. Let you.
They'll be so shocked. They'll be like, "Why has it gone up by 15
Wait.
people?"
As my first red bear command as going on my platform for actually being the president of the new online nationalist party, like the whole nations. Okay. Let us do our first otter raid on Answers and Reasons. Okay. Let's just go otter them up. Like, let's go do it, people. Okay, I'm going. I don't know about you guys, but I'm going over there now. Thank you again, Luke. It's
No
been a
worries.
pleasure as always, and
Same.
I look forward to your next conversation wherever you have it. So,
Thank you, Claire.
Okay. All right. I'm going to say good night. Yay.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.